Are we live? Yeah. Just one? Okay, good. So, welcome all for the part 4 of the Python sessions. So, I hope people are joining from the webinar as well, right? Okay, good. Um, so, before we actually start today's sessions, so we said we will have a short review of the project that was given last time, right? It was not a project as such, but it was a small problem. It was a game problem to develop a secret number game to guess the secret number. So how many of you could actually get it done? You could get it done. So this was what I'm just showing now. I think yeah, this is what we actually wanted, right? This is the transcript of the example session. Yeah, you had a question? Okay, so this was what we wanted. So basically, to reiterate what the problem was, so we had the computer and a user. So the user is going to actually guess a number, and the computer is trying to guess that number, right? So so if the user is guessing, for example, in this case, can I use it just? Okay. So we are live, right? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So in this particular problem, okay, let's say the number that was guessed by the user was 83, right? That is this example. So this shows the transcript of the session that will play out between the user and the computer. So if it is, let's say 83, I mean, you have to play it like this. The computer will first say, is your number 50? It will start with a mid value between 0 and 100. So the original question is, then you are guessing, the user is guessing a number between 0 and 100, right? Or rather from 1 to 99, right? Not including 100. So the computer is actually guessing a number which is exactly in the mid of both the numbers, right? Now, if the user says, as an answer to this question, is your secret number 50? If the user says it's high, then obviously the computer has to guess a lower value, and the lower value will typically be somewhere again a midpoint of 1 and 50, right? So so it's actually a binary search kind of a game, right? So every time you have to refresh your guess value to the midpoint of the previous low and high, and ultimately he will, if he enters C, then it's a correct guess. You just break out. So what are the constructs that you will use here? What are the programming constructs that we use here? Yeah, so it's a loop. Yeah, so it is better to use a while loop in this case, because in the case of a for, it is typically used with a range set of a list of values. So it's ideal to use a while loop. So you start with an infinite loop saying while true, and if you get a C value, right, you just break out from that. I mean, there are multiple ways you can write this. So let's see what is the best answer for this, right? So rather than me coding it right here, because which could take a little while, so I thought I will show a example. Let me reduce this. Is it visible from here, from there, right? And you may want to sit here because there are not many. Do you want? Okay, you can see this, right? Okay. Let me see if I can drag this. No, I really can't. Okay. So the first question is, please think of a number between 0 and 50. And so that is just a print. It is not a raw input. It is just a print, right? And then you start with two numbers, high and low. The high initialized to 100, and so to the maximal values, maximal and the minimal values. And you start with a variable to indicate, it's called a flag typically. You start with a variable which can flag whether you have guessed it correct or not. So guessed is equal to false, and you say while not guessed, right? While not guessed, you okay, this is here is where the main if condition actually comes, right? So if user input is equal to C, then your guess is equal to true, and you are ready to break out, right? So you don't have to break out because here you are not going into the loop if the guess is true. So you don't have to really execute a break. If you alternately, you can actually do this also. You can say true. Okay, I don't want to confuse you at this time. Let's keep it as it is. So while not gust, in the first case, first iteration, it is going to be gust is already initialized to false, so it is actually going to come inside. And if it is equal to C, gust is true. If it is equal to high, then what you are doing? You are changing the high value. Okay, just watch it carefully. Are you able to understand this one? This is not actually Python. It is actually just a logical process. So you are changing the high value to the old guess. So basically, what you are trying to do is, if you initially guessed a 50, and if I said a high, then obviously I have to guess another value in between 1 and 50, right? So in order to keep that logic of finding the midpoint between minimal and maximal same, I just change my minimal and maximal values. I just reset my high value to guess. So it becomes 50 now. So right now it is ready to find the new midpoint between 1 and 50, right? And if you still say high for that, so it's going to give the midpoint is 25. So if it is still you are saying high, then you have to make another guess between 1 and 25. Or in case you are saying low, then you have to find the other midpoint, right? So I guess this is not a very complicated logic. Now this is typically called as binary search. Okay. So how many of you could actually do this on your own? I mean, one. Okay. It's, you should. I mean, if you try a little bit more, I think you should be able to get it. It's not much of Python. It is more of logic development here. Okay. So is there any question with regards to the project as such? Sure. Yeah. Okay. If it is no, I didn't exactly understand. Yeah, the user can cheat in the sense it can actually lead to a lot of inconsistent entries, right? So he can say one is low and one again he can keep entering low. I mean, he can cheat, yeah, in the sense even if it is a correct value, he can keep entering low or high or whatever. So it can keep on going for a long time. That is true, but you okay, so it is actually going to be very difficult. For example, if there is a range of values, for instance, if you are guessing a value from 0 to 10, and if the user says it is low, right, then you are going to make another guess, for example 10 to 20, right? Now the low value can actually be, there are 10 possibilities, right? So if the user is going to enter for all the guessed values, for example 10 values, if he's going to enter low, then we can, yeah, that's an extreme case where he keeps entering low, where actually we know that by programmatic sense we know that it's a high. So we can actually tell that. So but that's going to be really tiresome for okay, so you want to create a logic which actually checks for the possible numbers, right? That's actually what you're asking for. We can do that, but it's a little tiresome for the user to play. We can do that definitely. So for instance, if it is between 0 and 10, if you keep track of the number of guesses the user has made. Okay. Okay.
So I used to loop until low is less than or high, less than or equal to high. If low is greater than high, then I'm going to tell the user you achieved. So there is
Low
only one
is
way when the user keeps, then the low will become greater than high. The low value will become greater than.
um okay, let me think of it. So um but is that a possibility? Can it ever happen? It doesn't have to happen, right? So for example, in the if condition that you are writing, there itself you can check, correct? You can check whether um, the 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 guessed value is actually between these, and if it is not actually between sorry, if it is actually between these and if he's entering it is high, then at the condition of the at the if condition itself you can stop him. um, I think I will need to sit with you offline to understand better what you are saying. But I get a brief, basic idea of what you are trying to do. We can do that. In my view, it can be done by if you keep track of the number of guesses that you have already made. That's what I am thinking of now. But there might be a better way to do that. Yeah. Yeah. We will see the program later on. Okay. So if there is no more questions, I think we can go to the revision, right? So what did we cover during the last time? Is there any questions from whatever we have covered so far? So, I mean, I don't want to revise the whole thing from the class one. So far we have covered all the data structures. We have covered the loops. We have covered the ifs. So there is only basically only one thing that is pending, which is the functions. Right, so functions is actually, as I mentioned, it's the cornerstone of programming. If you know how to create functions and how to call functions appropriately, when to create functions, that is very important, right? So I mean, you don't have to create functions for each and every little things. It's in a if you understand, in a way, if you understand how to create functions, you are actually done with programming. You can actually start creating solutions on your own ways. Of course, you won't be writing object oriented code and all that, but that's still fine. So you will be still creating solutions. um, so if there are no more questions, let's go into functions, right? Okay. So can someone tell from your knowledge, I mean, from your experience with other languages, like say Java, what are functions? Can you just briefly explain what functions are? We actually talked about it in the first class, so it should not be a new thing. Anyway, you will be knowing if you are into programming, if you have done programming before, you should be able to tell me what are the most important aspects about a function.
For each of code to be executed, often and often then we need a function instead of trying to put every time. So we just write in a function. So that we just call it and the control leaves that and executes the set of instructions.
Yeah. So what are the most important elements of a function? Means what are the most important characteristics of a function implementation, right? Yeah, the return, not the return type. The return, there should be a return value, and it's actually typically the functions will have a return value. What is normally referred to as without return values, whatever you see is in like VB. I think, have you used VB? Okay, and it's not necessary to have a return value. I agree, but typically there is another term that is used called subroutine for blocks which don't return a value, right? So there is a technology. I mean, terminology wise, actually there are two terms that we normally come across. But normally in Python functions, all of them will return something, at least to indicate whether the function is successfully is called or not. Like for instance, even for OS functions, OS level functions, you will normally have a return value which says 0 for success and -1 for not success, right? So it's not necessary you should have a return, but it's a good practice. Okay, so the most important parts of a function, you have to start with, in the case of a Python, you start with a keyword called def. So you must have an indication to the language, to the compiler of the language, that you are starting a function, right? So it can be in the case of let's say Java or any other language, any other object-oriented language, it normally starts like public, static, or right, or so that is the indication of a function there, and the function will have parameters in it, right? So it must have a, even if you don't pass the parameters, you should have empty brackets, right? So, and you should also, typically, as we talked before, we should have a return value. So here, what you're seeing here in the screen is an example of a basic function. So the keyword def indicates that you are starting to define a function, def a of x, and what you are seeing inside, this is actually a multi-line comment. I think we talked about it before. This is a multi-line comment. You can have multiple lines within it, right? All of these get ignored by the compiler when it actually runs. So anything between three codes, right? Anything between three codes, starting three codes and ending three codes, is treated as a multi-line comment. It's ignored. Okay, so in this case, there is nothing, no other statement inside the function apart from the return statement. So what does it return? It returns x plus 1. And the x value is actually referring to whatever is passed to it, right? So how do you call this function? So you call this function using the function name, and you have to pass a value. Let's say 2. Right? So when I say a of 2, then it's basically going to this, my control gets transferred to this function, and it returns 2 plus 1, which is 3. Okay. Now this we can we can actually use this function in so many different ways. For instance, I can pass a mathematical expression here. I don't necessarily need to pass an integer. I can pass a mathematical expression which results in an. I can also, I mean, there will be more examples coming down, but I can. Okay, probably I should just stop my explanation at this time, because there will be further examples which show more cases. Okay, so let me put, let's say 4. Okay, or let's say 4 into 4. So which computes 4 into 4, passes to this. That is my new x, and which gives us 17. Then in this case, what happens? It returns a float. So most notably, from the difference between other languages and Python, you don't have to define the type. You don't have to declare the type, right? So you basically just return it. And from the return value, from the way it looks, x plus 1.0 will always be a float, because there is a decimal involved in it. So it will always be treated as a float. Then the next case, what does it do? It accepts 2 parameters, the parameters separated by a comma, and it returns the sum of the 2 values. Right? Now, in this case, you can use the function in 2 different ways. The reason being, okay, let me just call this function. So 1, 2. This is going to return 3. AC. Okay, so we are back. Okay, so see, if I call the function as c of 1 comma 2, then it's going to return 1 plus 2, which is 3, right? So okay, I'll give you some time actually to try it. I guess some of you may want to try it, right? So just please try this example in your Python session, right? Because it's important while we are doing this. I'm not just showing it on the screen. You should also be trying it. Are you able to get the same result? Yeah. Write the same code and see if you are getting the same. Okay, if you say yes, I will proceed, right? Okay. Now, at the same time, I can call another function like this. What will happen if I call the function like this, c of string comma string? Yeah, it will basically join, because the function inside the function, it is going to return x plus y, and since it is data type independent, it's going to treat that plus as a string concatenation. It doesn't matter for it. So if I do this, it is going to return string. Now I can, by the same, I can also call, for example, something like string. What will this give? Yeah, it won't be able to know what is, how to add. So you're trying to add a number and a float and a string. Yes, still global and if you don't declare variable on the top, you really can't. Okay, so I got a question here from Ajit Kumar. How do we represent global and private variables? Okay, so there is actually a way to do that if you go to advanced Python. But for the time being, I would just stop at saying that there is really no distinction between private, global, and public variables. The Python doesn't insist that you should, not insisting. It's more of a convention for the users to follow. If the user wants to treat a variable as private, right? He typically calls names it as underscore variable name. The variable name will start with an underscore, but there is no stopping from anybody from using that. You can use it as a public function. I mean, public variable. There is nothing stopping you. The same thing holds for a function as well, right? So and for global variables are typically not encouraged in Python, in a language like Python. But for completion's sake, I think there is a way to declare a function or a variable as a global. You can use a global keyword to define a function, right? So that becomes available globally, right? Okay, I hope I answered the question. Okay. Okay, coming back to this. So if you want to actually make this work, look at the third line here. I'm trying to add a string and a float value. If I want to get my answer as string 2.3, then what should I do? Without changing the function content, right? Without changing the function content, if I want the third call to return string, yeah, so I will actually convert this number here. Okay, so I can actually have nested functions. In a way, this is actually an example of a nested function. Okay, so this is allowed. Okay, so the actual example that I'm trying to, okay, let me roll all this back, because the example that I'm trying to show here is a little different. Okay, so we have the first function called a, which increments the value by 1. Second one is increasing by 1.0. So, and the third one, I'm executing all of them, by the way. And d is a function which returns, what does it return? The d function, what does it return? It returns true or false. So if x is greater than y, it returns. So I'm executing that as well. And this one is another a little more complicated expression, but still returns a true or false. Okay, now the next one is giving me an expression x plus y minus 2. Okay, now there are a few questions based on these definitions. Okay, this is what we have to answer. Now, what will happen if I call the function a with a parameter of 6? Obvious, right? So it will give 6 plus 1, 7. A of minus 5.3 should again give minus 5.3 plus 1. It should be float. So it should give minus 4.3. Now, in this case, I'm not sure if this is a frequently encountered thing, but in Python it is. You will find it very frequently. It's a nested function. You are calling a of 6. So the most inner nest, right? The a of 6 is computed first, then the next a. That a of 6 is passed to the next a, then again to the next a. So it actually works in the left from the right to left, right? So what will be the result in this case? It will be 7 plus 8. Sorry, 7 will be passed to a. So it becomes 8 and then 9. And c of a of 1 and b of 1. So here you can see that this is the first parameter for C and this is the second parameter for C. Right? So C is, if you remember, C is a function which adds two numbers. It's given. So A of 1 is going to give 2 and B of 1 is going to give 2.0. Okay. Now 2 and 2.0 should be added in the C function. So it should be 4.0. Okay. What happens here? You call D with two parameters. What is our D? Yeah, D actually compares. So remember what happens when you compare a string and a number? What did I say? A string and a number will compare? Yeah, in this case it won't. D of okay, let me take another example. It's probably because yeah, it's because I was in a different kernel. It's still changing it. Okay, so you can see that the behavior is different in 2.7 and 3.x. So in 2.7, I mentioned earlier that when you compare a string and a number, a string is always treated as greater. Right? I hope you are paying attention to this. But in 3.x, the treatment is the way it works is different. So if I use this now, what is my D? I didn't use my D. Okay. Okay. So it gives a true in this case, right? In 2.7. In 3, the comparison is not valid. Okay, the next one is you're calling a function E with 3 parameters, A of 3, B of 4, and C of 3, 4. So let's look at what E is. So what do you think the answer will be? So let me copy this thing just for convenience. Okay. So this is my function call. Right. So what do you think will happen? I want the answer from you. Okay, by the way, I have to, since I changed my kernel, I will have to execute it again. Okay, what will happen here? If I execute, what should happen? It should be false. So A of 3 should give 4, and B of 4 should give 5 or 5.0. 5.0. They are different, okay, even though the values are the same. So what happens if you, for instance, if you give A of 3, I'll just comment this out, is equal to B of 4, or let's say B of 3. What should happen? It is false or true? False? False, because why did you say it's false? So let's see what happens. It gives true. Why? We have actually seen this. In the second class, I think I just, on the passing, I mentioned it. So it is equal to, double equal to is checking only for the value equal, right? Now, if you want to check if this types are the same, you will use something called as is. Okay. Not exactly this. I remember what I did the last time also. If you want to check the type, basically you have to use the type. Now the is actually is for a different purpose. Sorry, I confused. This is the correct way of doing it. If you do this, then it will return a false. Right? Is actually an operator which checks whether the two objects are the same, are referring to the same memory or not. So that is actually a completely different thing. So
the result of is and type of something like that, both are different.
no, is for a completely different reason. Is for checking if two objects are referring to the same, if two instances are referring to the same object. Right? Now, if you do this type, you are comparing the type. Right? But if and the same time, if you are comparing the two values, even if they are by type they are different, as far as the value is the same, they will still give true. So 2 is equal to 2.0 will still give a true.
But silly question, what if we use that instead of double equal to, use
is equal to, okay, we'll try here.
Equal to is.
So A of 3 is equal to B of 3. What do you think will happen? If I do this, what should happen? So what is equal to, what is single equal to? It is
double equal to means checking the
double equal to is
value.
yes,
Exactly.
true.
But single equal to, it will, I think it will assign that value.
Assign, yes. But if you do this, something like this, then what do you think will happen? You're trying to assign it to a function call, which is invalid, right? So the Python errors are actually, okay, these you can call this as exceptions. They are not errors per se. They are called exceptions, and they can be handled using your exception handlers. Now, all the Python exceptions, the messages that come with it are pretty understandable, I think. I mean, at least from a Python standpoint and Python programmer standpoint, I think they're pretty understandable. If you want a complete stack trace, have you seen stack traces? If you want a complete stack trace of where the issue is and what the issue is, right? So then you will have to go for use another third-party module called traceback. Okay, we will see that a little later. Okay, so have you completed this? Yeah, so we are still here, right? So what will happen to this call? If I call E of A3, B4, and C3, 4, then I'm basically comparing, what is my E? Yeah, it is. This is my E, right? So I'm basically comparing 4 and 5.0, right? C is, I mean, it doesn't actually matter what C is. If you look at this, if you might remember that it will be false because the first, it's an AND operation, right? So if the first one is false, definitely the answer is going to be false, irrespective of what will happen in the. So X greater than or equal to Y is always false. Okay, let's see the next one. Returns none type. So what does this mean? Why did I write none type? I'm not sure why did I write that. Okay, let's go to. Okay, so this we saw, it returns false. Now f, if you just say f here, this is my function f. If I say just f here, I'm basically not calling the function, right? I'm just using it as like a variable. And the good thing about Python is you can use functions like variables. Just like you can pass them around. It's there is a name for that. It is called as functions are first class citizens, it is called as. If you might have heard this jargon somewhere, they are treated as first class citizens. Okay, their functions are treated as variables themselves, as objects. Okay, so when I say f, yeah, you can pass them around like just like variables. So the first class citizen in when it comes to a programming language is variables. They are the first citizens. I guess that is where the term comes from. Okay, so the functions are treated as variables, so you can pass them around. For instance, I mean, the examples might come in the future, but I will just show you what I mean by that. For instance, what is actually f doing? F is actually x plus y minus 2. Okay. Now, let me think out an example for this. I will create a function. I'll create a function. Let's say g, okay, which takes a value called x. I'm not saying what type it is, okay. And inside this function, I will use the x like a function. Just have a look at this. I'll just use a function, this like a function. So I will pass parameters to x. So I will say 1 and 2. Okay. Now I will call the function g like this. Okay. When I call this, what happens? G of x. I should of course return. Okay. Why is it not working? Oh, there is no return here. Did you understand what's going on here? So I'm basically using a function called f as a variable x. Okay, normally the function parameters are variables, right? Now I'm just passing a function itself. Function, you can call it as a function pointer if you want. I'm calling the function itself to as a parameter to another function, and inside that I'm calling the function with two values of my choice. I'm calling it as 1 and 2. So this is actually a very useful operation in Python, in advanced Python. It's a very useful operation. It's called decorator. Okay, so the idea of decorators is you can pass a function to somewhere, to another function, so that you modify that function and return that function back. It will come as an advanced topic, but just try to understand what I'm trying to say. You are passing a function to another function, okay, and that function will do something apart from making a call to this. For example, if you want to do an operation on the server, right? So and if you in addition to doing this operation, you want to create a log statement in some file, right? Let's say you have 10 different functions, 10 different server functions. Now, instead of modifying all these 10 different functions and adding the log statements to each of them, what I will do is I will just decorate these functions. There's a syntax for decorating these functions. So when it sees that syntax, it knows that this function has to be passed to the parent function. It just modifies and returns it back. It's a little complicated things. That's why I'm not explaining at this time. I mean, I'm not going into example at this time. But this is the same idea. Okay. Okay. Let's look at. Okay, not this. This was an older one. Lesson 4. Okay. So here it's the same. So now that you have understood the basis of a function, everything else is the same. So you can basically use all those if conditions and loops and all the data structures that you have seen inside a function, and it will have a return. So now this should not be very hard. It's a function called a, which takes 3 parameters, x, y, z. You have an if condition, and based on what the x is, it returns y or z, right? So how do you call this function? Yeah, I mean, we will see in later on how to call this function. For instance, if I have a function like this, I can make a call like this: a of false, comma 2, comma 3. So the first one I'm using in an if, so that means it has to be a Boolean, right? So I'm passing a false here, and 2 and 3 here. So if it is false, what should it return? It's not returning true. Am I returning a Boolean? I'm returning a z value. Are you looking at the correct one? Yeah. Right. If since the value of x is false, according to that logic, it should return a z. So what is the value of z now? Whatever I passed. So I passed 3, so it should return 3. Right. And what is b? B is a function which takes q and r and returns the return value from a. And how do I call a inside? I'm calling like q greater than r, q and r. I guess why don't you try it out in your machines? It will return 3. For what? I'm actually not calling yet. So this is the call to the b. Okay, b3 of 2 will return 3. That's correct. But can you just try it out? Okay, let's do one thing. I mean, before we get into more further details about the functions, can we do some small example about function? Try to write a function. I mean, write a function which will accept 2 numbers, okay, as its parameters, and it will just return the sum of squares of those numbers. Can we do that? So if I pass it with 1 and 2, I should get a 5. Yeah. Yeah, the question is you have to write a function which will take two numbers. It will give you the sum of the squares of those numbers. So if you give 2 and 3, for instance, it should give 4 plus 9, 13. 2 square plus 3 square, which is equal to 13. Right? Just give some more time to them. Right? So basically what we are doing is finding a hypotenuse. And it's not actually square of numbers. You have to also square root. So if you extend it a little more, you are finding the hypotenuse of. So let's give 2 minutes to this. Okay, so cool. So I guess most of you have already worked out the answer. Okay, this is, as I said before, this is finding the hypotenuse. So now to make it actually complete, we have to get the square root of that number that return, right? So now call this. We will slightly modify the name of the function to indicate that it's a hypotenuse, right? So write a generic program, right? Write a main program to this, which will accept from the user the sides of a triangle. Okay, it will actually write give so it should be something like this. Okay, let's see. Okay, I'm just entering what you need to output from the program. So please enter. This should what should be the output of the program. Please enter the triangle's sides. Right now, the user is going to enter 3 numbers. Okay, you have learned about how to split them and feed into variables. Now you are entering 2 variables. Let's say 3, 4, 5. Right now, pass it through a function which will tell that these will form a triangle or not, a right triangle or not. Of course, hypotenuse thing. I mean that this function will work with only with right triangles. So your function should tell us whether these sides of the triangle can form a right triangle or not. So you should just modify that function slightly to return a Boolean value. So any questions on the web? Nothing, right? Okay, good. Okay. So I'm assuming that there is no question on this, right? If you have just completed, tell me. Krishna, is it done? Okay. So you have to just create the function, modify that same function to return a Boolean value.
It should take in the same order.
Yeah, it should take in the same order.
So we will spread first and second and come with
Yes, and come with the third one. Yes. So the first thing that you should do is to split the, change it to raw input. Now you will basically split this. Let's say a triangle sides. Split the triangle sides, and you should write it to, let's say, sides. Okay, you don't have to really assign it to a variable every time. You can just directly access it. So now you know that sides of 0 will be the first number. Okay, so sides of 0 and sides of 1 is the second number and sides of 2 is the third number. Now you have to write a function which will accept these three sides, and it will check whether the third number is equal to the sum of the squares of the first two. So I'm not writing the full program, I'm just okay, what happens here? Invalid syntax. Okay. Okay, I didn't close this. So let's say 3, 4, 3, 4, 5. It says split is not defined.
Function is supposed to pass in what
Delimited? Yeah, so without a, yeah, a delimiter, let's do one thing. Let's go to the Python shell. Sorry.
you can enter the name 3 times also.
Hmm? What? Unmute and resume. Okay. To 3, 4, and 5. So now these three numbers has to be passed to another function, entire list. The function numbers, right? So how should I write the function? Okay, but this is empty. Okay, so we are back. Your speaker is not working properly. Continue recording. Okay, so we are back to this problem. So we don't really need this, and we will define a function called hypotenuse, which will accept a list. Right now, inside this, we should have an if condition to check the square of the third number is equal to the sum of the squares of the first two numbers. Yes or no? Correct. So how do we check it? So the sides, right? So we are saying sides of 2 is equal to the square of this. We can use it like this, is equal to sides 0 square sorry okay. If is equal to this, then what should we return? It should return true. A better way would be what? Can just return this. Is it making sense? What I'm doing is making sense. There is one limitation to not limit requirement in and we oh, something wrong where else, so that no so which
Okay. Now I
split the now what if is not typing it or slow.
back. Yeah, it should be back now. Let me be.
Okay, so I hope you are back. Okay. Okay, so I think we are back live again. Okay, so far we have, I guess you have understood. So now there is only call to the function left out, right? So since the function is giving a boolean, we have to call it like using an if condition. So if hypotenuse of sides where
Because size is a this is string.
no sides is actually a no sides is, see we have split it, and so the sides this the return value of the split will always be a list. Yeah, it will always be a list, and it will be a list of strings. That doesn't matter. So we are passing that list to the hypotenuse, so it should be fine. Yeah, so I think what you're talking about is we have to convert that string to a number. Yes, that's true. Okay, so we have a valid so what we should do is we should convert each of these to, I mean, we won't use integer. Okay, we will, for the time being we can, but technically it can be a float as well. Okay, let us convert it to an integer, not the whole thing, up to here. Yes. Ah.
And then we use the if condition
Okay.
for a square plus b square is equal to c square and print the value of that. Then we call that function by 2, 3, 4, 5.
Ah. Yeah, it will be true. No, so you, are you asking a question or are you suggesting a solution? Is it a question that you're asking?
I think both. In one, we declare one function. In that function, we declare 3 parameters: A, B, and C.
Yeah, so in this case, we, instead of defining 3 different parameters, we are passing the whole list that contains 3 values. And inside the function, we are just separating it out. by saying 1, 2, and yeah, 0, 1, and 2. Right? So this is understandable, right? Okay. But before using it, we have to convert that to an integer because it's a the sides list contains an integer. I mean, contains a string. Okay. So hypotenuse of sides, if it returns a positive number, then it is the triangle is a right angle triangle. Right? So are we done? So this should work, right? So now if I enter 3, 4, 5, it should tell that the triangle is right angle triangle. Now if I enter a different value, 4, 5, and 6, definitely it's not. Right? So are you able to get to some level with this? Means, do you think you can code yourself this one? Okay. So we'll proceed with the. So we are back to the exercises. We were at this. Yeah. So you remember what was our A, right? A was actually taking the first argument. If the first argument is a true, then it is going to return y. Else it is going to return z. Now, how will this function be used? A of 3 greater than 2, A and B. So the first parameter to A, the function A, is 3 greater than 2. We are passing an expression. We are not passing an integer. I mean, Boolean directly. We are passing an expression which will return a Boolean. So 3 greater than 2 is true. So A has to return A itself, right? So A has to return A itself. So what does it mean? Okay, I haven't defined B yet. Okay. It is going to return the function A itself. Okay. Now, how can I use this? I can again chain this because since it's a function, I can make a call to this function again. Even though it doesn't make sense, it seems a little silly to do this. You can actually call this like a function because it is returning me a function. So I can call it like false of 2 and 3. Right? So look at this. This is actually kind of, if somebody actually comes from another language and looks at it, there is every possibility you'll get confused. You can just chain the functions like this. You seem to have one pair of brackets followed by another pair of brackets. You can have an endless stream of brackets. So this will return 3. Right? Now, if this was A again, and this was true, sorry, it will again return a main function, which I can use again, 3, 5. So I can keep chaining my functions, and which is next to. I haven't used Java that extensively, but I think it is really. I don't think it's possible. You tell me if it's possible in a language like Java. Can you do this thing in Java? I don't think so. Can you? But in Python, actually, it is just like you are talking to somebody. You can actually do this. It's just like a natural language. Huh? Yeah, I agree. I agree. So there was a concept of function pointer in the languages I have used, like the C and pointers are actually a nightmare to learn. Pointer to pointer and okay, let's go to the next one. So I think we have spent considerable amount of. So should we take a break? Do you think we want a break or? Yeah, we'll take a 10-minute break. Okay, we'll come back at 11:40. Yeah. Okay, I'll be back. Okay, so welcome back. Okay, so where were we when we left? Problem. Okay, so the problem 2 we completed. I think let's go to the third one. Let's go to the third problem. Okay, this is actually a simple problem. I think we have tried something similar. If you have already written a function, you don't have to do this again. This is just to give a practice for you. So, okay, I think if we can even leave this one. This is actually a quadratic function. We can leave this as well. For okay. Okay, so we are getting into the nested functions, and I think, yeah, this is actually a nested definition of functions. Okay, let's first look at the first example. So in this one, we have a function called fx, which returns x plus a. Now, this actually talks about the scoping of functions. Okay, so in this case, what do you think will happen? We have initialized a to 10, right? And here we are returning x, whatever x value, plus a. Okay, but before calling the function, we are reinitializing that to a. We are resetting that to 3, and we are making a call to the function. So will the value of a be 3 or is it 10? That's the question. So will the value returned from the function be 3 plus, 1 plus 3 or 1 plus 10? It will be 1 plus 3. So it has to be 4, right? So that is basically a scoping, right? It cannot be really called a scoping, but since we are resetting the value of a just before the function call, this is what is getting used. Okay, so it's not the value which is defined before the function definition. It doesn't matter. Before you make a call to the function, what is the value of a? Okay, the next example here, this is a little interesting. This is an example of the decorator that I was talking about. So here we are making creating a function called g, which does some things like x equal to x plus 1, and inside the function you have another function defined, right? So you have h function defined, which returns x plus y, right? And returns, what is the return from there? What does g of x return? It returns h of 6. Just have a close look. This extremely rare thing in other languages, but in Python it makes much simpler. 19. How does 19 come? Just spend 2 minutes on this, and for the rest of you. So when you call h of 6 here, you are making a call to h, right? So y becomes the value of 6. It takes a value of 6, and it returns 6 plus the value of x, right? So at this time, it's going to take the value of x plus 6. And what is the value of x at this time? It is this value. And this value is going to come derive from here. And this value of x is nothing but what comes from here. And this value is nothing but this. So it becomes 12 plus 1. So this is 12 plus 1. And that 12 plus 1 is going to get added to 6, which is 19. Right? Is it understandable? Right? Even though you're not able to write functions like this, it's fine. But at least if you can understand it, it's really great. Okay, shall we go to the next one? Shall I go to the next one, or do you have any questions on this? It's not a recursion. You are not calling of it's. Did you mention recursion? That's what I was saying. So, for example, this function edge. Let's say it's a server task. It's a some operation that you have to do on the server. Okay, so I will comment it like this. This is some server operation. Just assume it, even though it is not actually doing that. Let's assume that it's an operation that you have to perform on the server. Okay, now this operation is did you understand? Okay, so you are basically calling that within another function, and within that function, apart from returning this one, you are modifying that function. You are additionally doing this operation. So this will be the logging part, right? So if I have a function, and this is actually getting confused because it's defined like this. So let's say this is the server operation. Okay, I can't really modify this code without introducing the decorator. We will come to that at some point. So let's, for the time being, let's consider that this is the server operation that you have to do. Okay, now I have to find some way to pass this function into this function. Okay, now when I pass this function into this function, in this function I'm going to do a logging in addition to calling this function. Okay, so in addition to doing that server operation, I'm also logging, and that logging part I am not handling. The other function is handling for me. I hope it's a little clear, but without showing the decorator part, I can show you some maybe some offline articles on this, which can complete. There are so many articles and so many documents written on decorators. It's a very powerful concept. I'll show something to you. I'll share something with you. But just for the rest of the audience, I think we will, because there are participants from web also. So, so okay. Let me go to the next one. Okay, so I think we can try this out. So we previously wrote, and even though we didn't write, there was a previous exercise which said write a function for squaring a number, right? Now you have to use that function to write a fourth power function. So since we haven't done the square, you have to do both now. Please start doing both. Write a function that can square a number, plus write another function which uses this squaring function twice. So it gets a fourth power. In fact, you can actually cheat because the answer is actually there. But I want to do it yourself. Yeah, of course, in this one, I haven't defined the square function. Yes, you need two functions. You need a square function and you need a fourth power function. So we have defined a fourth power. If you look at that answer, I have defined a fourth power function. Anand. Okay, so where are we with this problem? So we have to define two functions. One is called square and one is called fourth power. So I just defined a function. I just showed how to define a function called square, which will basically square whatever number is given. Now, how do I define a function called fourth power? So where are you stuck? So is anybody able to complete this one?
You need to use another function.
Yeah, we need to define another function.
Fourth square of any variable. Under that, return number into it. Then we call the first. You have to define second function inside first function.
No, you don't have to. No, you don't have to define a function second inside the first. You define two functions separately. So here, if you look at the original question, there was an answer section in that, right? So not this. Was it 8? Yeah. So if you look at this, inside this fourth power function, I'm basically reusing that square function 2 times. Now this is the square function that I defined in my shell now. Got it? different way. Okay, no, we wanted to get it this way only. So okay, now if I define this function, okay, of course I can't. Let's call it fourth power of x, return square of, let's say x. Right. So how does it actually work? So when I call the fourth power with a number like 2, that is going to
Because inside the square,
return this value. So inside this, if you carefully see this, I'm first calling a square, so which returns a 4, and that 4 is passed again to the square once more. So it becomes 4 square. Yeah. Should I come there or do you? Okay. Let me just check that.
this is completed in 2 lines. I have to use branch.
Okay. Um, okay, let's go to the next problem. So the ninth one. Okay. Okay, here again we have the answer. So let me take this somewhere else. Okay, so this is the question. Write a Python function odd that takes in one number and returns true when the number is odd and false otherwise. You should use a %mod operator, not if. Right? This function takes in one number and returns a boolean. So this we have seen in another case actually. But can you just attempt this once? So without an if condition, you have to do this. And it has to be a function. So write a function which will do this whatever is asked without an if condition. So the point is actually you are not avoiding the use of if completely in the program. The function should not use the if condition. You will be using the if outside in the main program, but the function should not use an if. I'll just pause this. So how can we do this? Any idea? So what all methods exist to create a Boolean variable? Think about that. Okay, let's say I define a variable called a, right? Did you get it? Okay, so what was how did you solve it? Okay, with correct, but not using if is the. So how did you compare it? Okay, okay. So that gave you a true or a false. So we have to define a function which takes in one number. So let's call it as number. Number %2 is equal to, if it's equal to 1, if it's equal to 1, then it is odd. Yeah, this is what you wrote, right? Yes. Now if I say odd of 100, it will return a false. If I say 100, 101, it will return true. So I have not used an if here. I've just generated a boolean by some other means. Where? No, there is no other way. So you have to create a boolean. Yes. So you can actually do a check. For example, not equal to 0. This check can be different. It can say not equal to 0, and that those things you can do. We'll continue. Okay. Ten. Okay, let's look at the 10th problem. Okay, so here you remember we have written a function, a program for finding if you have a vowel inside a string or something. Now, can we rewrite the same function using a function? I mean, rewrite the same program using a function. So the function should be for finding if the given character is a vowel or not. Right? So you keep calling this function for every character in that string. The answer is there actually, but your program. Let me just change the question to: can you write a main program that uses this is vowel? Since the answer is already there, can you write a main program? I will give a string to you, or let's say you accept a string from the user, right, and use this function as many times as necessary to check how many vowels are there. All right. Okay, so let me try writing this. Okay, I didn't save it. I didn't save the file. That is why it was keeping returning false. I was worried about. Okay. So here, this function is the isVowel function. So I have just tested it once, right? Now the question that I had for you was to accept a string from the user, and for every character in the string, you have to make a call to this function, and you have to check. You have to tell how many characters exist, how many vowels exist in that string. So how do you do that? How do you use this function now? In a for loop. So of course we have to get the raw input. So please enter the string, right, and accept it to, let's say, a string variable. Okay, and now what do we do? For character in string, and we have to keep calling this isVowel, right? So we have to call this isVowel for a character. Now, yeah, now how do we count it? Yeah, so you can keep a count equal to 0. Okay. Yeah, if is vowel, then count plus equal to 1, and finally print. Okay, have I shown the formatting? There are different ways of formatting a string, so I'm going to use a slightly different. I don't know if I have shown this formatting to you. The placeholder, have I shown it to you? Okay, you can use the %d, %f. Have I shown it? No. So we can actually write as a big string, I mean the output, like the given string has %d vowels, and I can fill in the %d by like this. So I just say count. So basically what happens here is this count fills in for this. Right? So when I execute this, I expect, okay, I have some, yeah, built-in function for that is a different one. That is not, yeah, that doesn't work here. That is for counting in a list. Yeah, the counting in a,
We knew that this is Bangalore like that. So you can have to count that how many character means
yeah,
vocals are involved in it.
you can use a count for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
At that time I used it.
Okay. Okay.
It gives you that idea.
Okay, maybe. Okay, maybe. Right now we are not using that. Okay, let's run this. Why don't I get an input here? Okay, let me run it from here. From entry string. So this is a string. So that has 4 vowels. 1, 2, 3, 4. So did it work for anyone? It works? Okay. Okay, so another way of doing that is we can redefine this. Instead of this is a big piece of code, right? Instead of that, I can also say if character in A, E, I, O, U, right? So this also will work. This is actually a much effective way. Okay, so I'm not running it. Okay. So shall we proceed? Are you done? So we can also do the return. So in case you haven't watched it, so instead of that long piece of code, I can also use it like this. So in fact, there is another shortcut for that. Instead of writing the string myself, I can use str dot. There is a set of vowels. I can actually get a set of vowels here. I think it's probably not str. It is. I'm actually forgetting it. Let me just string vowels. Okay. So there is one class which actually gives you. No, I think I'm not getting it. I'll tell it to you maybe next class. So there is an easy way of actually, instead of hard coding this A, I, O, U here, I can actually get it from as a property of some class, as a static property of some class. Okay, so we'll continue to the next one. I think there is only one more. There are just two more. Yeah, so this is a simplified version of that, which basically checks a list. But what we have actually is much better than this. Let's look at 12. Okay. These are a few functions that come as part of the str class. So you have functions like capitalize, lower, upper, and all those. So all those functions you can actually get it from here. If I do dir of str, I'll see every function, every method that's supported by the str class. So I have functions like, for example, find. For instance, if I want to find if a given substring is part of a string, if I want to count for a number of a certain character in that, or if I want to capitalize, if I want to check if it's an alpha, if it's a number, or what is the index of a string. So I have so many different functions, so methods, right? So let's look at some of those methods here. So s equal to abc, and when you try to call s dot capitalize, okay, there is a distinction between calling capitalize in the first case and the second case. In the first case, it's going to return the function itself. Okay, I'm not making a call to the function. Here I'm making a call to the function when it will give capital A, B, C, right? No, when I called s dot capitalize, it was not a call that I made. On the str1 upper will be, the entire string will be upper, and str is upper is going to be false because str1 is still defined as. Now let's say if I define str1 is equal to this, now this one should give true, right? Okay, so okay. Okay, str1 is lower, that is true. str2 is equal to str2 dot capitalize. Okay, now again forgot. So this one should give only capitalize the first character, right? Now swap case function will just change the lower to upper and upper to lower. Then index function is going to give the number, the index of the first. So index of e is equal to, where is e in this? str1 is exterminate, so e is coming in the 0th location, so it is giving 0. Now index of n will be 8. Okay, following the two snippets of illustrates define between the find and, yeah, so there is a difference between find and index. So find will return 8. Yeah, so this index is not found, so it's going to return str count of the number of occurrences of e. all right? And then now you are calling a replace function to replace this with this. So it can be a character replace or a substring replace as well. Now here I'm replacing a substring with another substring. So number 7.
Second last.
Uh,
Give number.
if I give a
Suppose the string have that number 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. So you have to write it instead of the number. We have to give the space. We will do the same way.
where number?
See,
Which
instead
number?
of E, one number is there. So it will replace space only. Space also, no? Instead of number. This is for string only, no?
This is only for string. Yeah, this is only for string. Yeah, not for numbers. Because you are calling this with the string class. It won't work with anything else. Okay. So I think that's it in this exercise. Let's do one and one generic. So by this time you should have understood most of the important techniques as well as the features of the language. I mean, of course, there are some more left. Like the next most important thing is the object orientation, but it is not necessary for you to do a program using object orientation. For writing a basic solution to any problem, you know enough, right? So with that, I think we can safely go. The next class, I am planning to do the API testing, how to conduct API testing using Python. Then in one of the classes, I will also cover how to use Selenium with Python. So we are entering into the problem solving part. So and since we don't have much time left, so let's do one thing. We will take a little more time, and I will introduce you to a site which is called as Project Euler. Okay, this website is actually a repository of a lot of problems, at least about 500 problems, and of varying degrees of complexities. Right? It starts from a very simple one. So when I say simple one, it won't be like your school problems. It will start from simple to it could be very complex. So the complexity actually is decided not by how many lines you need to write. It's actually the complexity is decided by the algorithm itself. So for instance, for certain problems, you can use the so-called brute force method. So which will take probably an hour or two to execute. But you should get a better algorithm. With a better algorithm, you should be able to solve maybe in a minute or two. Right? That is the complex level of complexity these guys are talking about. Not in terms of the number of lines or the number of functions you write. So you can register freely into this site, and this is a very well very well kept site with a very valid set of problems, and which I should say it's a kind of standard for your skills in development. So you can actually quote the number of points you get here in your resume, for instance. Right? It carries value. And one good thing about this is there are a lot of participants on this site. It will also carry a discussion forum for each problem. But the discussion forum will appear to you only if you solve the problem. So the solution, all the problems are made in such a way that you don't have to submit the problem, the solution to the problem. Instead, it asks only for the answer. It will be a numeric answer. So I will give you some sample problems from the first page. What happened? Okay. So you can see there are increasing complexity of problems. So let me just check the first one. Right. So here you can see that the answer is a number. Every problem expects you to get you the answer as a number. and if the given number is correct, then irrespective of your solution, it will be treated as correct. If you submit a right answer, then you can go into the discussion forum for that problem, which will show you the various solutions people have. So the entire program that people have written in various languages. For instance, if I log in, I don't remember my login password at this time, so I can't really show you. Do anybody have a login? You have a login?
I have, but I will.
Okay. 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 So unless I log in, I can't really show you the discussion forum. So you will see various languages, including all the well-known languages, your C, C++, even assembly languages, even Fortran, COBOL. Every language people would have solved it and maybe posted their own solutions. Right? For simple problems like this, you don't need to consult, but very large problems you will find, for instance, there could be problems which could be really complex, which you will probably need to get very, very good algorithms done. So you can actually see solutions for all these problems. So let's not start with this one. This could be a really difficult one. Yeah, so let's start with the first one. Let's start with multiples of 3 and 5. I think, did we try this the last time with Chidambra when he showed it last time, or? Okay. Yeah, I think we didn't do the exact same problem, I think, but we were printing hi and hello and all that. Okay, can we try this problem? Now, this is, you can solve it with any of the techniques that you know. You know all the techniques for solving this problem by this time. You can use optionally, you can use a function. You don't have to. You can use a list. You can use a for loop. Is the question clear? Is there any confusion about question? So ideally, you should be using functions to solve this. Either 3 or 5, yes. Yeah. So ideally, when you get a problem, I mean, this may not be a problem that you see every day. You will probably see only Selenium problems and all that. So why are we doing this? That will become clear later. But for the time being, whenever you get a problem of whatever nature, you try to split it into multiple, breaking down the problems, right? So how many smaller problems you can observe from the problem? And all those smaller problems essentially will convert itself into a function. So in this case, for instance, we have to have one of the smaller problems is to find if a given number is a multiple of 3 or 5. That's the smallest problem you can define. So write a function for that. Right? Now that will be used within a loop of 1000. Right? So that part can be main program. It doesn't need to be in a function. Now there should be another function for another smaller part of this problem is to find the sum of the multiples. So that one also should be another function. You have done this? If you need any help, just tell me. But I'm going not exactly offline, but I'm taking out my. So how will this function look like? If I have to do this is multiple 3 underscore 3 and 5, how will that function look like? Three, yeah, not 3 modulus, the number modulus 3, or number modulus 5, right? Just a single line. So let's just oh, okay. Okay, I was talking without the headset. Okay, so we are going to create this function. There needs to be only one line in this. So what we are doing is number return number %3 or number %5. Right now, the good part about writing in functions is one is of course the maintenance will be simple, but your development also gets simpler because you can test each of these as units. I don't have, without writing the complete program, I can actually check this independently. So I can just make a call to this. I can just call it like, let's say 16. Oh, there's something running. Okay. Why is it behaving like this? Why is it giving a 1? Instead of returning a Boolean, it's actually giving a 1. Giving a 1 there. So I have run it. It is actually giving a 1. Is there a, can you spot a problem in this? Is there something wrong in what I did? Which one? No, return. Put what as a function? No, I'm expecting that is multiple 3, 5 to be a Boolean, but it's giving a 1 when I ran it. Ah, yes. So I should compare it with 0. Will it work now? Yeah. So I will give draw input. Please enter a number. Number. Okay, for some reason I think Komodo is not working well with the raw input. Let me execute from here. Okay. So let's say 12. It's true. Okay, so the unit is tested. It is working. Okay, what is the next unit? Take a sum of multiples. Right. So what's the question again? Okay, here is a question again. Um, if we list all the natural numbers below 10 that are multiple, okay. Now, in the main program, okay, we'll start writing another function which will accept a list of numbers, and it will sum up all those and give that. Actually, we don't need to write a function, fortunately. There is a function called sum readily available. So I'll show you one. So there is a function called sum pre-built. I mean, you don't have to write this function called sum, which will accept a list and give the sum of the numbers in the list. Right? So since this unit is already available, I'm not going to write this. So I'll just need to write my main program now. Okay, so let's wait for 2 minutes for. Or else I will just comment this out. I will just comment this. So how do I write my main program? Yeah, so for each number, each in range of, let's say 1001, you have to take, because it will be okay. Now what do I have to do?
If condition,
Yeah,
then 3 is
okay. Yeah, so if it is multiple of 3 or 5, what should I do? I should sum it up. But for summing it up, I need to first convert all these numbers into a list. I should have a whole list of numbers. Only then I can sum up. Otherwise, yeah, you can keep adding to a sum counter, some variable as well. Okay, let's do that. Okay, that's probably easier. Sum is equal to sum. Let's not call it sum because sum is a keyword. So let's call it sum numbers. So sum number is equal to 0 if is multiple each, right? Then you keep adding that to the sum of numbers. Sum numbers plus equal to each. Percent the sum numbers, right? So if I run this, okay, this is okay. Let's run it from here, right? So if I run the same thing with 10, for instance, I should get 23. So what's the number here? Yeah, this is 23. So just a cross verification that the actual original question will work. Yeah, so the answer that I need is 234169. Should we try one more? Should we try one more problem? Let's take okay. Hmm? You want a complicated one? Yeah, it is. Can you solve it? Can you solve it now? No, if it is simple, then we can go to another one. Should we go to another one? Yeah. Okay. Let's look at even Fibonacci. I mean, Fibonacci you have all done, right? Okay, this could actually be complicated. Which one? Smallest multiple? Yeah. Is this also simple or Fibonacci was better? So in a way, right? What you're saying is right, Krishna. So that problem was actually simple. You thought. In fact, every problem is actually simple. Every problem that you will see is no, you are right. You are completely right. Every problem that you will encounter is actually right. Only if your viewpoint is correct. You have to manage to see the correct the right place, right? If your viewpoint is right, every problem is actually right. And it's simple. The only trouble that you will face is how to improve your performance. I mean, that is, we are not even going there. That's the next level of problem. Those kind of problems are plenty in this project Euler. You will see a lot of them. So for instance, like I said before, some problems can actually take around 2 to 3 hours to run. Right? So obviously you can't do that. So you will have to have better algorithms to your performance should become better. That is the complexity level of complexity these guys talk. So otherwise, every problem that you will see here is in a way simple, but it gives a very good practice for you in practicing all your let's say lists and dictionaries and let's say your for loops. It gives a whole lot of practice. Functions. When to create functions is a skill to pick up. It's not very. It's not something that it comes naturally to you. To anyone, it's a skill that you must pick up. If you can identify that units in the problem, the smallest unit in a problem, and check the smallest unit just independent of the other, those are the skills that you must pick up through these practice problems. So what else units can you see in this problem? Two 520 is the smallest number which that can be divided by each of the numbers from 1 to 10 without a remainder. Uh, no, it's not. No. So what is the smallest unit you can see? Look at it from that angle. So isn't my smallest division there? Do you see something around that remainder problem without any remainder that stands out in this problem? That's the smallest unit. So if you can write that unit which takes a number and tells if it is fully divisible by another number, that is the smallest unit. So create that unit. Once you create that, it's just a matter of routinely applying that in a specific algorithm. So do that one first. So the function that you have to write is, let's say, is divisible, takes two numbers, right? So and the first number divided by second, if it doesn't give any remainder, then it is fully divisible. It returns a true. That's it. So write that one first. So once the center piece is correct, everything around it will be correct somehow. I mean, you will be able to fix pieces here and there. Once this center one, once that is not correct, everything else. So it is like, okay, let me not say more. So just try solving that for that is divisible part. There is another way to look at this problem also. How many of you remember in your 8th standard math classes? I'm talking about algorithms here. Okay, I'm not talking about, this is what we just discussed with the brute force method. We just check. I mean, in fact, you don't know how many. One problem if you do that brute force method is, till what number should I keep trying? Till what number should I loop? That is not known, right? So how do you solve that problem? So you have to find a algorithm, better algorithm, or just assume that I will try up to, let's say, 4 lakh or some random number. That's not a very good technique, but it might work. How do you know what is the upper limit? How do you know up to which number should I loop? Huh? Think back to your math classes. Can you see anything like this? You would have definitely answered all these in your math. Okay, sum of, there is no squares, there is no sum here. Why? No. No, why do you need to go to sum of squares of the numbers? See, technically, if you look at, just one, you can also look at this. It's a math problem, really. If you look at this number, let's say consider 1 to 5, right? The given number should be divisible by all the numbers from 1 to 5. What's the first number that comes to your mind? 1 into 2 into 3 into 4 into 5. Correct?
Combination of LCM and some other.
LCM, HCF, have you learned? That's one way to look at it. But from that, now you got up to the maximum number you have to check. You have to check only up to this number. In fact, not even this number. It can be even reduced. I mean, yeah, up to half, but even further down. It can be even further down. For instance, if you have into 6, let's say 1 to 6, divisible by all the numbers from 1 to 6. If something is divisible by 6, then naturally it's divisible by 2 and by 3 also, right? So you don't have to, you have to basically check only up to 5 into 6, because it's, if it's divisible by, sorry, 4 into 5 into 6, right? But it can be different if you are going further in the range. For instance, if you are going up to 9 or maybe 36 or 40, then anything divisible by 36 is divisible by 6 also. So you, in that way, you can reduce your upper limit. That's your algorithm. Okay, but in any case, in this, the maximum number you have to check it is until this, until the product of all these. Right, we are nearing 1 o'clock. Okay, can I do one thing? Can I ask you to do some of these problems? Just pick any 5 problems from this, okay, and just work out these and come back in the next class. We'll discuss this. I think it's time to wrap up, so let's do that for today. Yeah, just pick any 5. If you are not able to do anything, then we can discuss next time. So I think next class we will specifically we will cover that API testing part. Okay, so shall we close this class? Jaswant, shall we close this class? Okay, thank you guys. Bye. Highest common factor. So if you are given a set of numbers, what's the highest common factor? You have to only go and do that.